Hi everyone, it's Movement Art and Soul with Karen Sparks, and I'm a counselor, an artist, and a movement artist. This channel is about your personal and spiritual journey towards enlightenment, wholeness, healing, integration, individuation, words like that. And today's topic is going to be, how can I relax? This is a really loaded question. And what I want to do is talk about it in terms of a wheel. So, in several of the paths that I studied, there were teachings called wheel teachings. And what I was taught was layers of meanings walking around a wheel, like you can see up on the screen. Depending on the spiritual path, and there are different reasons for this, what they would place on the wheel would be in a different direction than another path. And it's not really important, really. Why? Because these days, with the world being so small in terms of how quickly information can spread, it doesn't really matter, because there are people all over the world who study various paths on places of the planet far from them. So we could look at, why does that happen? Let's say one path, they put the physical in the west, another path puts it on a different direction around the wheel. Doesn't matter. In this particular wheel that you see, the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects are placed around the wheel as they are. And I just put this up here in order for you just to have an idea of what we're going to talk about. So when I talk about how can I relax, I'm looking at all these aspects and I'm going to explain them to you. So let's take a look at the physical. One of the things that we need to realize is that the physical body responds to whatever you put into it. We know that. There's that old saying, you are what you eat, things like that. So I am going to say one of the first things to ask yourself is, what am I ingesting? So whatever you eat does have an effect on your ability to relax, because when your organs get stressed, depending on what you're having, that can then equate to physical tensions in the body, restricting further flows of energy flows, and which relate to, on the physical level, circulation and so on. Tension itself in various places of the body, muscular tension and so on, chronically over time can also create a lot of other physical problems, chronic problems. So we hear so much about this, right? We hear so much about watch what you eat. Things like sugar, alcohol, carbs, junk food, fried foods, things with little nutrition can affect the body in different ways. So that's the first thing to think about. When we're wanting to relax more, we will be able to relax more when what we're feeding ourselves helps us to feel lighter, healthier, full of nutrition. We're detoxing the body, and that helps us to feel lighter. Physical also means your physical environment. So the environment that we're in can also impact us and our ability to relax physically. And so when we're in a stressful situation or around others, let's say we're around negative people or situations that are stressful, there are things in our environment, like with these lockdowns and stuff like that, there's been a lot more stress reported to me with people I work with as a counselor. So we know that, right? That external things can be stressful when we're around something that we find stressful for a period of time. And for some people, let's say they're around negative people, and for whatever reason, it could be for kids, for housing reasons, for financial reasons. I mean, people talk to me about so many different things, and all of these things can impact us. So not only which we will get to in a minute. Do we need to look on the inside? We also are affected by our environments, right? It's really great to find support when people are supportive and kind, and we can communicate in a relaxed manner about what we need to do to problem solve a situation or whatever. That's a lot easier to deal with than getting all worked up about something and we're not able to relax, and therefore we can't communicate effectively because we're too tense. So let's talk about the next little category, which I'm going to bring us to the mental. There's a lot more to these categories than what I'm going to get into today, but this is just a basic introduction to it. And these wheel teachings, like placing things around the wheel and doing teachings around them, they're multi-layered and multifaceted. So in this particular video, I'm just briefly introducing you to this. So in the mental realm, as many of the teachers have told us, we are just plagued with our own internal dialogue. We rehearse things that have already happened. We rehearse scenarios. We go over, so-and-so said this, and then this happened, and then this. We go over and over and over these things in our minds. Consciously, sometimes we're aware we're doing that. And most of the time, I would say it's unconscious. It's like you've pushed play on something and it's kind of going through a little loop and it just goes on, and you've now forgotten you pushed play and it just keeps going. Well, our minds are like that too. But it can be conscious. So the important thing for yourself is to become conscious, if you're not, paying attention to your internal dialogue. What are you saying to yourself? So I have had people say to me, yes, but I'm in this situation. This situation is pressing. I'm very upset about it. I can't seem to stop my thoughts. It's just going around and around and around. And so what I would say is that I understand, especially during stressful times. I mean, I have had different experiences in my own life. I know what that's like. During stressful times, our mind can become more rampant. However, we need to get a handle on it because we don't know how long we are going to be in a particular situation. We do not know how long things are going to take, even when we do want to make decisions to make a shift and change something. And so our best bet is to work as soon as we can to getting management of these internal thoughts, because these thoughts can also be attached to feelings and these energies in our body. And so we can tense up because of what we're thinking about and because of how we're thinking about something. So it becomes very important to become aware. One thing I say to people when they say, well, I have to think about this because I need to get the situation under control. So this is a tool that I have used myself. I find it very helpful. And I have shared this with people for years. And I say to them, okay, you have these things going on. I hear you. I understand that. I can understand your situation. Give yourself a particular time each day for reflection. I learned this tool in shamanism, and it's a wonderful tool. You can just take out whatever time you can, whenever you can, when it's convenient for you. Many times we suggest to do it like later in the day when you have some quiet time, like after everything's been going on. But really, you're the one who designs your day, depending on your work or your family or whatever else you have going on. So pick a period of time. Give yourself a limited period of time. Like, let's say I'm going to give myself 15 minutes. I'm going to give myself half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour, because I really need to do some planning or thinking or making decisions, and I need to decide some things. Whatever time period you think you need, give yourself a time frame and just say to yourself during the day when these thoughts come up. Now, this takes awareness, right? You need to pay attention to your thoughts. When scenarios and things start coming up in your mind, you say, stop. Stop. This is not the time right now for me to be doing this. I'm going to move my attention over onto this. Be more present with what you're really doing now. So for example, I'm making this up. So for example, you're doing the dishes. While you're doing the dishes, let's say something's been bothering you for some time. And as you're doing the dishes, you're losing track of what you're doing in the moment, and you're beginning to rehearse, go over something, think about something. What if you start to go into a typical feeling around something, or scenario, fantasy, whatever, even if you're problem solving, you stop, catch yourself. Maybe you don't catch yourself right away, but pay attention. Over time, you will catch yourself right away, right as soon as you start doing it. And if you're not used to doing this as a tool, you will get used to doing it if you keep applying that and doing it over and over like a practical exercise during your day. So you just say, okay, I'm not thinking about this right now. This is not my thinking time. This is not my ruminating time. This is not my time to think about these things and make some suggestions to myself or try to work this out somehow. You say, what am I doing right now? I'm doing the dishes. Okay, feel the water, feel the dishes. Breathe, feel your feet on the floor. See more clearly where you are in this moment. Use your senses to help you ground. And your breath. Breathe. Every time the thought comes up, just push it aside, wash it away like a little cloud. Wash it away as you're washing your dishes, whatever you're doing, whatever. People even tell me that, you know, when they're working and they're supposed to be paying attention to what they're doing, their mind wanders off and they start thinking about that problem or that situation or whatever, even if it's just internal dialogue of some sort. Well, we want to get a handle on these negative thoughts, these fantasies, these problems, and things that are bothering you and going around and around your mind, because these things do create tension. And this video is about how can I relax more? Well, you can't relax when you're allowing your mind to run rampant. So we know that especially these negative thoughts, we just don't want to constantly be immersing our entire system into that kind of a pattern. So mentally, later on, you are sitting there and you're saying, this is my time. Well, go ahead now. Now think about everything you wanted to think about. Write it down. Get your journal out. Write about it. And what I want you to do during this process, during this time, is to also ask yourself, what am I able to do about this situation? What am I able to do about how I'm feeling about this? What am I able to do? Can I come up with a short-term plan? Do I need to get some assistance with this? And you just keep doing this as a pattern. Initially, people will tell me, okay, I had a really hard time stopping my internal dialogue. I started realizing I was doing it, but the more I tried to let that go, the more it just kept coming back. Well, this is a typical thing. When we do try to break a pattern or a habit, particularly one that we're used to doing for quite some time, it sometimes feels like it comes back tenfold. The more you try to work on a new line of choosing to do something different in your life, it seems like for a while the other thing wants to come back even more. So it's okay. Don't be too hard on yourself with this. The thing is, don't give up. Realize that you will get more energy when you can gain control of your internal dialogue. You'll get more energy by being practical about when you want to think about what's bothering you, or give yourself some time to say, okay, yes, I've been feeling angry, or I've been feeling sad, or I've been feeling whatever it is, frustrated, whatever it is you're feeling, and here's my situation, You know, you can make decisions, whether it's getting some help, making short-term plan for little steps you can take into a better direction, coming up with a better way to move in your life that gets you thinking on a different line than what is not working. So in other words, I hesitate because I do know, having worked with so many people in my life and having been through a lot of things myself, that sometimes it is very difficult for us to shift a situation due to some external circumstances beyond our control. But I do share the Serenity Prayer with people. I tell them, you know what, the Serenity Prayer is quite interesting. And in Stoicism, which is a philosophy, they almost have the same kind of idea in it. One being the first part of the Serenity Prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And that's a principle in Stoicism, to accept what is, like to accept what you can't change. And so why I say the Serenity Prayer to people, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Is that there's a lot of wise words in there. So it brings us more peace when we realize something's external to us and we cannot change it. There's another topic on dysfunctional relationships that I talk about. So let's say you realize you have a dysfunctional relationship pattern. You can't change the other person. you know? So accepting that a situation is how it is, surrender brings peace. Because if it's something you can't control, like the lockdowns we've experienced, right? We can't control that. So accepting that something is how it is brings us more peace. And then the courage to change what I can. So the only thing we can change is ourselves. When we need to relax more, we need to realize there's things we're doing and there are situations that we're in that are leading us to experience this kind of tension and stress, which makes it difficult to relax. Much of what we do to ourselves. And if someone is doing something that is affecting us in some kind of a negative way, which creates suffering of some sort, we are still in that situation. And having worked with many people who say, I can't get out of this situation right now, I have complete compassion for that and understanding, but there are little steps that you can take. You can find some help. You can get support. That's what counseling is for. There are support helpers in society, and you can turn to them or to a friend or to a family member if you have supportive people around you. And now I understand not everyone does. So there's the mental aspect, and there's so much we could talk about it. Each one of these categories can be, a whole video, a whole playlist, a whole book on its own. But we're going to move on from the mental into the emotional. And so when there are all these things going on, let's say it's relationship or work or finances or family or whatever it happens to be, maybe it's within yourself. There's something within yourself you find hard to self-love or hard to forgive yourself or hard to accept certain things about yourself. So there's all these different ways in which we react to things that are going on, creating some emotional patterns that we can get stuck in. And as I mentioned in another playlist, I have studied a healing philosophical path called Jinshinjutsu, which talks about certain attitudes that we can get hooked into and become patterns. And they're worry and fear and anger and grief and pretense. Those are the major attitudes that they call it on that particular path. And it is from a Japanese background, and many of the Eastern philosophies would talk about the energy systems in the body, some of them called meridians, where different lines of energy run and affect our entire system. You can think of it like a circulation pattern. That's very helpful. And these things will impact our organs. And so we make connections and say that these attitudes, feelings, emotions can affect our organs on a very deep level. And then this can create further imbalances, and our entire system can move to disharmony, creating different types of illnesses and imbalances and chronic issues. So we have things like experiencing worry, which can affect our digestion, our stomach, our spleen, things like that. We have fear, the kidneys, right? A lot of times people will go to the washroom more. Then we have anger. And there's a lot of talk around the liver and the gallbladder. And we have grief, which can affect the lungs. And I don't know if you've heard this before, but about the large intestine letting go. So grief does have to do a lot with letting go, because we're holding on to things that are very painful, which cause grief in our lives. And then there's the pretense, affecting the heart, small intestine. And so this comes from more Eastern thought, and many of you may have heard about this, and some of you may not. But it's just an example of how emotions or attitudes can definitely lead us to experiencing tension as well. It can then become denser, tense up into the body, create a postural pattern. And so our emotions definitely impact the body and our ability to relax. So if I'm caught up in an attitude, you can often see that as a posture in the person's body. And that's why I think body reading became popular. And one way of body reading is noticing attitudes, expressions on our face, or a postural hold in the body. And so one thing you can do is to learn your emotional patterns and reactions to things. And again, everything that we do here on this channel is always about working towards higher levels of consciousness, awareness, conscience. And so you want to be able to perceive yourself more clearly, see yourself more clearly, feel, observe yourself and your reactions, track it. And as you know, if you've listened to some of my other videos, that I talk about tracking your pattern, put it on a circle. This tends to happen. Here's a typical response to that type of situation for me. And we will have different attitudes depending on how we're triggered. So get to know your attitudes and be prepared. Oh, I know the situation. I know that I usually react like this to it. I can bring more awareness in this moment and I can breathe. I can feel this energy coming up and I can work with it. I can transform it. I can do something different with it. Something more beneficial to me. Because if I hold on to this and it's a negative thing and I don't transform it, I can hold on to it. And then when I hold the emotion, that's when it is difficult for me to relax into the moment. So surrender is like saying, okay, I feel this anger. I'm not going to repress it, but I'm not going to lash out. So it's not about saying, yeah, go ahead, do whatever when you feel angry or when you're in grief. Go ahead, just cry and cry and cry, get depressed and wallow in it. It's not about that. When people talk about feeling your feelings, it's being aware that you're feeling something and learning how to transform what you're feeling into a more useful form of energy. And so it's allowing that to be there, but doing something different with that. And when you start working like that, working on more of a inner level, moving this energy, because emotions, as I had mentioned somewhere else, is E-motions. They're energies in motion. And when we learn how to feel that moving energy within ourselves, then we begin to have more control. So when people talk about controlling emotions, it's not like a control over others. It's an internal control of the movements of the energies within yourself. So on a shamanic path that I studied, sitting in the south, there is a teaching around emotions. And the teaching says that, well, the south is around the emotions and it's about balance and it's about control. So when you take a look at it, knowing that emotions are energies in motion, then you need to balance your emotions by controlling the motion of energy within yourself. And that is a key for someone who, if, as they call it, sits in the south, depending on what their personality type is, type thing. So that's what that's about. And we balance out by being able to move these energies and feeling the emotions and being able to express them appropriately too. So you can say to someone, when you did that, I felt angry, but you're not yelling and screaming. So they might get a little confused about that because they don't see the anger. But when you felt the anger, you allowed that to course through you and you channeled that into a more useful form of energy, but you could still express that the emotion or the response is anger because maybe they crossed your boundary or they did something that was really harmful or hurtful or whatever. So I disagree with a tendency of some people to think that certain emotions are like absolutely not even necessary to have at all. I think as we develop, we might feel an energy of something, but then again, we won't label it because everything just becomes an energy, a feeling, a motion of some sort within us. And we learn how to work with that rather than identifying, getting hooked into it, with a story and with a response and with a whole big thing around it. That is very draining. Emotions are very draining, particularly negative emotions. But it doesn't mean it'll never happen again. It's just that as you develop, you may not even identify something as being anger anymore, but at a higher level of your ability to transform these things as they arise within you, then that's what I think is meant by that, is that you get to a place of more neutrality because you're just working with energy all the time, moving it, directing it, and being the master of your emotions, being the master of yourself, controlling, directing it. One of my teachers would say that. We talked about anger, and he said, well, anger is misdirected, unfocused energy. Very interesting, isn't it? Because if you focus the energy, another thing that's well known is that creativity is really great for anger, or dropping to the floor and doing push-ups. Well, what are you doing? Energy rises up. It rises up and splits out into the arms as an energy, which is why people who get angry, who have no control, punch holes in the wall, punch people's cars, punch people in the face. So when you feel that energy dropping to the floor and doing push-ups is awesome, because there's that energy being channeled in a more positive way. And creativity is another form of moving energy out and expressing. So let's move on to spiritual. When we need to relax, on a more spiritual level, I can talk about energy. And so my entire being is energy. And in order for me to relax, then I need to move in deeper. If I'm having a difficult time, let's say, to relax, move in deeper and start to feel very deeply into my entire being. And on a spiritual level, there may be things that I can come to light that can teach me something about myself and my inability to relax. So it could be a whole teaching on a more spiritual level of what you need to learn and what you can come to see about yourself, as well as your entire energy being. So on a practical level, if I suggest to you, there is a video, and I'm going to be making another one, and the video that I have listed on here is a relaxation video of about an hour long, in which I talk you through different parts of your body, feeling that part and going deeper into it with your feeling, with your attention, with your mind being directed to that part. So your mind, your feeling, and you're going into that part of the body to see how much more can you let go. And we also use a healing energy light that I suggest you imagine as we do move through the body and relax on a deeper level. So that's one very useful tool, because your mind, if you can focus on that video, your mind gets a break. So it gives you something to place your attention on while you relax. So one important thing is, if you're having trouble sleeping and you're having trouble relaxing, because life does have its challenges, we have different stressful periods of time. If you can take an hour during your day to lie down to meditate by doing something like that video that I offer, which I will be putting others on there so you have some variety, your body can get a deep level of rest. In yoga, they talk about yoga nidra. And in Western practices that I have studied over the years, I learned things like progressive relaxation. I learned things in Kung Fu and Qigong around relaxation, and Tai Chi. And so this is something that it's just a very, very popular topic. In Yoga Nidra, they say if you can actually relax and go in deep into a real traditional Yoga Nidra session, it is so healing, and it's like sleeping. So if you're having trouble sleeping, then that is something to do as a practice, because if you can't sleep at night, then just keep working. Take some time out, get some healing, take some time out to do a relaxation video or a yoga nidra or a progressive relaxation, whatever technique seems to work for you personally. Okay, so the other thing is that the last little bit I wanted to mention is that if you're having trouble relaxing, it's the sign of something that you need to find out, which can lead you to uncovering more things about yourself that you can do differently. So we ran through these different categories, and that's my suggestion to you, is to look at them on the circle and make some notes around physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and whatever else you want to put down on your sheet of paper, in your journal maybe, and start to make some changes by just doing some small things that you do regularly and consistently, and you'll notice a difference over time. For most of us, find it hard to relax due to stress, due to something specific that is going on in our lives and how we're responding to that. And so that aside, personal illness can also lead to having a difficulty time relaxing. And so sometimes we do have a real physical illness that we need to attend to that can lead to having difficulties relaxing as well. So I hope that brings you some light on how can I learn to relax more. And until the next video, you can look forward to an upcoming video, which will be another video that I'm going to do with some music and some other types of scenery that you can imagine while you're resting. Until next time, take care.